Hi guys, it's me ChazzaHD and welcome to this weekend preview for the 2022 Mexico City Grand Prix, which of course is taking place this weekend. Good to see all of you guys here for this weekend preview, and of course we'll be going through what we usually go through in this preview, the teams and how I think they'll get on this weekend, and also obviously looking at their form coming into this Grand Prix. We'll get into some stats regarding certain teams and drivers, onboard lap of the track, and we will get into a big piece of news that took place on Tuesday in regards to Audi's entry to F1 in 2026, and they have announced that they are going to be buying up a team, which I will reveal that or get into that later on in this stream. But yeah, great to be here for another Grand Prix. Great to be here for, the return of the Mexico City Grand Prix. It is one of the best events of the season. There is no doubt about it. Race day, especially in Mexico, is it's like a carnival. It's literally like a Formula One party or a celebration of F1. It's absolutely brilliant. And with all the Day of the Dead celebrations, obviously there's Halloween on Monday. Yeah, it's absolutely brilliant. The atmosphere at this Grand Prix, definitely. If this, and I'm going to be honest here, if the atmosphere that they have at this Grand Prix, if the Grand Prix wasn't held in a country that is so dangerous, I would definitely love to go to this Grand Prix because of the atmosphere. But yeah, it is a reality, unfortunately, that the country is that we're racing in this weekend. It's not the safest country, but at least it is a great atmosphere at the actual Grand Prix every year. And yeah, obviously, if Sergio Perez does end up at least on the podium, if not winning the race, you can expect it to be even better than it has been most years. Hello to all you guys watching. Great to see you all here. No matter what time it is in your part of the world or where you're from, I hope you're all having as best a day as possible, given whatever circumstances you're all going through. And yeah, hopefully tonight you'll join me in previewing this Grand Prix, and you will join me for this weekend, because I will be covering every session on the channel. I'll be doing a watch along for obviously practice 1 and practice 2 tomorrow, and then practice 3 and qualifying on Saturday, and then the race, of course, on Sunday. In regards to will I be joined by my co-commentator Niblo for Sunday, I don't know. I'll probably be able to let you guys know on probably the beginning of my race watch-along stream on Sunday, a couple hours before the race actually gets underway. So yeah, I'll let you guys know about that further when we get into the weekend. But yeah, after what was a good Grand Prix in Austin, I think, to be honest, we should get maybe not the greatest race or the best race of the season sorry, here this weekend, because let's be honest, it is pretty hard to overtake here. I know obviously you have the long pit straight and you have a second DRS straight just a couple corners after that long pit straight, but once you get into the middle sector and the final sector, it's very tight and twisty. So yeah, it's not the easiest track to overtake at, and we haven't had, I would say, yet a classic, amazing Grand Prix here in Mexico since the return to the country in 2015. But we have had some good races here. There's no doubt about that. Last year was meh. It was okay. The best Mexican Grand Prix I can remember was probably 2016 or 2018, I would say, is probably the two that stick out. Maybe 2018, you could argue, is the best, but 2016 obviously had a more famous moment with obviously Verstappen and Vettel having their controversial clash on the track, and they ended up both getting a penalty. Obviously, they didn't have a crash, but Verstappen cut the corner at turn 1, and then Vettel got a penalty for cursing out the FIA race director at the time, Charlie Whiting. That's probably a bit more memorable. But yeah, I hope we get, a good race this weekend and something as competitive as we got in Austin. But I wouldn't expect as much overtaking this weekend as we got in Austin, because it is, again, harder to overtake here than it is in Austin. And obviously, in some parts of the track, we are running at slower speed than than we are at Austin, where a lot of the Austin track is quite high speed, which definitely does help with the ability to overtake there. But before we get into the teams and how I believe they'll do this weekend, and get into obviously how they are form-wise at the moment and how that might affect this weekend's Grand Prix, let me get into the championship standings before this Mexico City Grand Prix. So, Max Verstappen, as we know, is the world champion. Just so you guys know, though, he is 124 points clear of Charles Leclerc in second. Leclerc only 2 points clear of Sergio Perez in third. That is going to be, until the end of the season, a very close fight. For this weekend, it's, I would say, hard to say exactly who is going to come out on top, because even if one driver has or is a bit higher up the grid than the other, I think in the race it could absolutely change around, as we saw actually in Austin, where Sergio Perez started 9th, Charles Leclerc started P12, and I assumed that Perez was going to be finishing ahead of Leclerc, and had a great start to the race, did Perez, but had his front wing damage, and in the end Leclerc finished ahead. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting battle there between Leclerc and Perez. George Russell is obviously 4th in the championship. He's pulled away from Carlos Sainz behind, which is good, but his Grand Prix in Austin last weekend was pretty poor, and his pace also was not that great. And Lewis Hamilton is now only 4 points behind the Spaniard in the driver's standings. Hamilton, I think, has a pretty good chance at finishing 4th in the championship. Will he actually finish 4th? I'm not sure he will. I think at best Lewis will finish in 5th. The reason I say that is because obviously he is good enough to finish 4th in the championship. But I just think, with only 3 races to go now in the season, that there isn't enough time left for him to actually get that. But yeah, P5 definitely possible. Lando Norris is obviously in 7th, quite far ahead of the drivers behind, with Ocon 8th, Alonso 9th, and Valtteri Bottas in P10. Still P10 Bottas, even though he's not scored a point since the Canadian Grand Prix, which was the 9th race of the season. And we're now on race 20 for this weekend out of 22. So it just shows you how long ago it was in the season when he scored a point. On the constructor side, which is, I would say, a bit more interesting than the driver's side at this point, Red Bull, of course, have won the Constructors' World Championship. They won it last weekend in Austin. Congratulations to them. Ferrari in 2nd with Mercedes 3rd. And yeah, with 3 races to go, I don't see Mercedes catching Ferrari. I think they've left it a bit too late in the season to actually get up to 2nd. I mean, they are, 53 points behind. They not only need to hope they get maybe a race win and some really good results overall in the final 3 races, I've got to also hope that Ferrari have possibly a non-score in one of the final 3 races, which, to be honest, I know Ferrari are pretty incompetent, but I don't think that is, at this point of the season, I don't think it is very likely. So yeah, I think I think Ferrari will finish in 2nd. As for the battle for 4th in the championship, it is getting very interesting indeed. Alpine obviously currently in 4th, 6 points clear of McLaren in 5th. Alpine did score a few points with Fernando Alonso, they thought initially, but he obviously was given a 30-second penalty later on. Ocon did move into the points because of that penalty, so that at least they did score something, but McLaren, with Lando Norris's 8 points in the US Grand Prix, they have closed the gap massively to the Alpine team. And even though I still think Alpine have the better car compared to McLaren, it's still very hard to say who is actually going to win this fight. I mean, a few races ago, I think I was saying Alpine, and to be honest, after the Japanese Grand Prix, I thought it was looking likely that Alpine would win that fight. But at this point, 6 points between them, 3 races to go, it is hard to say, because we've seen in the last few races that even with one team maybe being quicker than the other, some unreliability from a certain team causing there to be a massive point swing, or maybe a wet race causing there to be a massive point swing in one team's favor. And we don't know what's going to happen this weekend. Maybe at the start of the race both Alpines will get took out, maybe both McLarens will, maybe in Brazil we'll have a wet race and that will cause it to massively swing around. So yeah, it is hard. Sorry, it is hard to predict exactly how things are going to play out this weekend. Or not this weekend, sorry, for the rest of the season between Alpine and McLaren. Talking of weather, by the way, I am just quickly having a look to see what the weather is for this weekend. And let me just have a quick look. And yeah, the weather's fine. Not actually as warm as I expected it to be in Mexico for this Grand Prix this weekend, but yeah, it seems to be a pretty nice weather and not a lot of wind either at the circuit, which is good compared to what we had in Austin. But yeah, in the championship, yeah, Alpine and McLaren, it's very hard to say who is going to win this fight. I am going to go with McLaren, though, because I think somehow, some way, they will produce maybe not a big result, like a podium or anything, but I think they'll get, in one of the final 3 races, they'll have, say, a double points finish with both cars. And it'll be enough to stretch them ahead of Alpine to the point where Alpine just cannot catch them back up. I don't know what race it will be. I'd say I'm probably favouring either this weekend or Brazil to be one of the 2 races where that could happen. But I think McLaren will finish in 4th in the championship. I mean, looking at the battle, though, between Alpine and McLaren, really Alpine should win the battle, because this season they have had the better car and they've got a better driver lineup, I would say, than McLaren. I know people may say, well, Ricciardo, he's still got a bit of quality about him, but if you're looking at actually how the 4 drivers have performed, I would say, I would say Alpine have the stronger lineup. But yes, very hard to call who's going to win that. And then lower down the championship, you've got Alfa Romeo and Aston Martin, 6th and 7th, just 1 point separating them. I wish I could say the same, that it's hard to call who's going to win that fight, but I'll be honest, I think Aston Martin are going to win it because they have a much faster car at this point. And Alfa Romeo, their production on race day at the moment has been very, very poor. And again, since the Canadian Grand Prix, where Alfa Romeo scored 10 points in that Grand Prix, since then, Alfa Romeo have scored the least points out of any team on the grid. I think since the Canadian Grand Prix, it's only been 1 point from Alfa Romeo. When, if you compare that to Williams, I think Williams have scored 6 points, I think, since the Canadian Grand Prix. So yeah, it's very poor from Alfa Romeo. And given how the form is going, I think Aston Martin are going to finish 6th in the championship. And with Haas and AlphaTauri, Haas still ahead. They pulled away slightly because of Kevin Magnussen's great 8th place finish for the team in that little fight there. But I still believe AlphaTauri will finish ahead of Haas because I think they've got fundamentally a faster car than Haas do. But we'll see whether AlphaTauri actually get ahead before the end of the season. And at the very back, we have Williams, who of course are going to finish there unless they somehow, I don't know, get a 1-2 finish in one of the final 3 races, which would be something incredible. But when you look at it, we've got 3 very important, very close fights in the championship from 4th place down to 9th. So we must keep our eyes on that because, again, very important for the championship in terms of prize money, and it could definitely make the difference for certain teams going forward. But anyway, let's move on from that, and now let's get into the teams and how I believe they'll get on this weekend. And of course, we will start with Red Bull Racing, who have now won in 2022. Since the French Grand Prix, they have won 8 races in a row, and they're looking for number 9 in a row this weekend. And to be honest, I think they'll get it. I don't think they'll be stopped, really, this weekend. The reason I believe that is because even in certain races, in this run they've had of 8 wins in a row, even in certain races where Ferrari have had a car as quick, if not quicker, in qualifying, Red Bull have still ended up getting the victory. But not just the victory, they've ended up winning the race pretty comfortably, despite it being pretty close in qualifying. And I think, coming into this weekend's Grand Prix, it will be pretty close between Red Bull and Ferrari in qualifying. Maybe Mercedes as well. We'll have to see what their pace is looking like in practice, really, to determine whether Mercedes can actually fight for pole position. I mean, Mercedes might be able to fight for the win, but again, we'll get into that later on in this stream. But yeah, in qualifying, it'll be close, but in the end, I think Red Bull will get pole position because they have such great form around here. Max Verstappen, obviously, has a brilliant record around this circuit. He has won the race 3 times, and he has started this race on pole position. I think... actually, no, he's never started this race on pole. He did finish first in qualifying in 2019, but he... what do you call it? He was caught speeding under yellow flags in his final lap, so that's why he ended up not starting the race actually on pole position. But yeah, even if they're not on pole position, Red Bull, we've seen so many times in the last 2 or 3 months, and you could argue really 90% of this season, that Red Bull have a better race car. They don't punish their tyres as much as Ferrari do. They have a lot more consistent pace, and they have 2 drivers, Max Verstappen and Sergio Perez, that are very good in race conditions. I would say Max and Perez, I'd say they're better in races than they are in qualifying as drivers. So yeah, with tyre wear being something that's going to be very important as a factor for this weekend's Grand Prix, I think Red Bull are going to be very hard to stop. And I think the only team in the race that can actually stop them is Mercedes. I think, really though, if Mercedes are going to stop them, Mercedes are going to have to get a pretty good result in qualifying. If Mercedes end up qualifying in 5th and 6th place, then yeah, it's going to be pretty hard for Mercedes to actually come back from that and put Red Bull under pressure in the race. But yeah, I think Red Bull will end up having a pretty comfortable weekend. Again, qualifying, I think, will be close. That will be probably any other team than Red Bull's best chance to, be the winner, I guess you could say, for that session. But yeah, for the race on Sunday, I just don't see how Red Bull are able to be stopped. Again, Verstappen, he's won this race 3 times. Sorry. Let me repeat that. He's won this race 3 times as Verstappen. And for Sergio Perez, obviously, is a home Grand Prix. And we know that he'll be putting in a extra special effort this weekend to make sure he is at least on the podium for Red Bull. And if you actually look at his history around this circuit, Perez, pretty much every Mexican Grand Prix or Mexico City Grand Prix, whatever you want to call it, that he's had since 2015, he's done, with the cars he's been driving, pretty much the best he could have done. I think there was a couple races for Force India where he finished 7th or 8th, and he was pretty much doing as well as he could have done. I think the only race I can think of where he couldn't, or he could, really have done better than he did was, I think, 2016, because that race, I think Hulkenberg, his teammate at the time, was actually ahead of him in the Grand Prix. But and there may have been one, I think, in 2017 maybe, where Ocon was ahead of Perez. But yeah, he's normally at his best around this circuit, is the point I'm trying to make. Obviously, last year he was unluckily kept away from second position in the Grand Prix, which would have, of course, completed a Red Bull 1-2. And the reason, obviously, he was denied was because of a great defensive drive by Lewis Hamilton, which is why they ended up, or that's why Perez ended up finishing in third. But yeah, I don't really see how Red Bull are stopped this week. And let me know in the chat, though, guys. Do you think Red Bull, do you think there's any realistic chance that they don't win the race this weekend? I'd love to hear what you guys have to say in the live chat. But yeah, for me, they are the clear favourites. And to be honest, looking at the 3 races remaining and the type of tracks we've got remaining, unless we get like a properly mental race before the season ends, I don't see how Red Bull lose a race before the end of the season. Their car is just the perfect, not the perfect car, but it's got the perfect balance in terms of it's got, you know, the most straight line speed really out of any team on the grid, and a shit ton of downforce. And arguably at times, well, not as much downforce as Ferrari, but they're in that same ballpark, which is why they have won so many races this season. Max Verstappen, of course, he's won now 13 races in 2022. And overall, Red Bull, out of the 19 races we've had overall so far this season, Red Bull have won 15 of them, I believe. Yeah, 15 races in 2022. That is an absolutely incredible record to have for this season. But talking of records and stats, let's get into some stats regarding the Red Bull team for this weekend. So Max Verstappen has won in Mexico 3 times since 2017. His wins here were 2017, 2018, and 2021. The 2017 and 2018 races, he started on the front row, and then 2018 last year, he started third, but was first by turn 1 by slipstreaming the 2 Mercedes and getting past them using that slipstream into the first corner. And yeah, Red Bull looking for their 9th consecutive win this weekend in 2022. And very important thing to look out for, of course, for this weekend's Grand Prix, is that Max is looking to get his 14th win this season at this weekend's Mexico City Grand Prix to break the 13 race wins in a season record that Michael Schumacher and Sebastian Vettel jointly hold. So if Verstappen does win this weekend, or wins one of the final 3 races, which he will certainly do, then he will have the most wins in a Formula 1 season. And that would be a great record for Verstappen to have. And to be honest, even though the Red Bull car has not been, you know, by far the most, or the best car on the grid by far, it's not like that the RB 18 is a, you know, it's not like a 2020 Mercedes car or 2004 Ferrari or anything like that. But really, when you look at this season, Verstappen and Red Bull have pretty much dominated in 2022. And now we'll head on to the Ferrari team, who had yet again another disastrous Grand Prix. Not really, though, which makes a change for Ferrari. Not really. Down to themselves. Carlos Sainz obviously lost the lead on the first, or straight away from the first, not the first corner, straight away from the grid, sorry, going into the first corner. Carlos Sainz lost the lead of the Grand Prix, tried to get it back by doing a switchback on Verstappen on the exit of turn 1, and then Russell in the Mercedes took him out of the Grand Prix. Very much a shame, because I think Carlos had pretty good pace last weekend, but he got ruined one corner into the 56 lap Grand Prix. And then Charles Leclerc put in a very good performance, I've got to say, to finish in third. The only reason Leclerc couldn't fight for the win was because the Ferrari car just wasn't quick enough. In race conditions, we have to say that clearly. The Ferrari was quite clearly slower than the Red Bull and slower than the Mercedes of Lewis Hamilton. And that was, to be honest, it's quite sad to say this from Ferrari's point of view, it wasn't really a surprise. I think we saw that coming, really, in the race, Red Bull and Mercedes being quicker over the 56 laps, and that's what happened. And we've seen so many times, unfortunately, with this team in the last few Grand Prix that, you know, they just cannot keep up that same speed that they've got in qualifying, and I don't see that changing this weekend. Even if they were to get pole position, I think there's a very high chance, because they aren't the quickest team in a straight line, there's a very good chance they would get slipstreamed and overtaken into turn 1 anyway. So, yeah, I don't see Ferrari winning this weekend at all, because, yeah, even if they get pole, they're not going to really have the advantage into turn 1. But if they don't have pole position, and they do get a slipstream from the back of Verstappen or Perez or whoever is ahead of them on the track, will they actually have enough pace down the straight to get into the lead into turn 1? I'm not sure that they will, but you know, we'll see whether that actually does happen into turn 1 on Sunday. But to be honest, even if Leclerc for Ferrari is leading the race at the end of lap 1, does anyone watching this actually think that Ferrari are going to hold on for 71 laps around a track where tyre wear is such a crucial factor to your race result? I don't think anyone watching this actually thinks they could win the race, to be honest, given that, you know, factor. Maybe if we get a late safety car and Ferrari are on fresher tyres and softer tyres compared to cars around them, maybe they could end up getting the win. But if that scenario doesn't play out, then yeah, I just don't see how they end up winning the race this weekend. And with Ferrari, it's just such a shame, because I thought at the start of the season that they had solved these tyre issues, which actually, even though I know these 2022 cars are different to the cars before this year, they've had this issue for the last few years. If you remember back in 2019, they wore their tyres out quicker than Red Bull and Mercedes. In 2020, even though they had a very slow car anyway because they had a lack of power, they would wear their tyres out pretty quickly. And even last year, there were a couple Grand Prix where we had quite high tyre wear, where Ferrari just, you know, were wearing their tyres out 5-10 laps quicker than other teams were in the midfield. So, yeah, it's a shame that this issue persists. I don't know if it's the way Ferrari build the suspension or the wheel. I don't know if it's to do with that, but they've just had this issue for a few years now. And again, even with a new set of regulations, they've still got this fundamental problem which keeps costing them compared to Mercedes and Red Bull. And if they had not had this issue, or if they had had, say, the advantage that Red Bull have had this season, which is having better tyres and being able to look after their tyres better, Ferrari probably would have won 2 or 3 more races this year. But yeah, their inability to look after their tyres has really cost them in 2022, alongside, obviously, all of the mistakes, the unreliability and all of that. But yeah, for this weekend, I don't see them winning. I think, honestly, on Sunday, they will probably, out of the top 3 teams, have the slowest race car. Because we've seen that since really since maybe the French or Hungarian Grand Prix, arguably, that Mercedes just have a better race car than Ferrari do. Definitely since the summer break, Mercedes have had a better race car. So yeah, I just don't see how Ferrari have got a good enough car to win for this weekend. Another thing to mention, though, which I'm trying to remember exactly what information I was just going to share. That was it. So Charles Leclerc obviously took a penalty for the last weekend's Grand Prix for a new ICE and turbo. We believe that Carlos Sainz will be taking at least the same penalty this weekend, which is why you'll notice when I was talking about Ferrari there, I did not mention Carlos Sainz as a possible contender for victory, because, yeah, if he is taking that penalty on, which I think he will be, it eliminates him from contention, because Ferrari just don't have the pace, even if they're at the very front, to actually win a Grand Prix right now. So, yeah, the only person they can rely on is Charles Leclerc. And unfortunately for Leclerc, who is, I would say at the moment, driving pretty well, he just doesn't have the car at the minute to actually get the job done on race day, which is a shame, because I think Charles Leclerc has had a very good season for Ferrari, or not for Ferrari, but he's had a very good season for himself. He's, I think, driven very, very well, but the car and the team, unfortunately, are just not there for him. Let's get into, though, some stats regarding Ferrari coming into this Grand Prix this weekend, and also for Charles Leclerc. So Charles Leclerc has never finished on the podium here in Mexico. Last year, he finished in 5th, I believe, in Mexico. And then 2019, he started the race on pole, but then was put on a 2-stop strategy compared to the winners on the 1-stopper. And that's why Leclerc did not finish on the podium, finished 4th that day. And then I think for Sauber, he finished in 7th place, if I am correct. Ferrari's last F1 win was in Austria 3.5 months ago. And to be honest, I think it will still be their last F1 win, even when we get to Bahrain at the start of next season. And Ferrari's last win in Mexico was in 1990 with Alain Prost. That weekend, it was a 1-2 for them, with Prost first and Nigel Mansell in second. Obviously, that Grand Prix was the classic Grand Prix where Mansell went round the outside of Gerhard Berger at the final corner. Can't remember what the name of the final corner is. I should remember, because I am, an avid or a diehard F1 fan, but I can't remember what the name of the final corner was. But yeah, it was that Grand Prix where Ferrari last won in Mexico. They've had chances to win since we came back in 2015. 2017, Ferrari were on pole, but then Vettel ended up hitting a couple people and breaking his front wing. 2018, I wouldn't say they had a great chance at winning. I think they were quite far down in qualifying compared to how they were normally that season. 2019, they locked out the front row and then ended up, I think, 2nd and 4th in the race. So, yeah, they've had their chances, Ferrari, to break that little duck they have, but they haven't been able to do so. And now we'll go on to the Mercedes team. And, oh no, not that. The Mercedes team who had a pretty good Grand Prix in Mexico. In Austin last weekend. And I've just seen, actually, Toby Grunner from Automotor and Sport has announced that Mercedes has removed the controversial flap separators, or turning vanes, to not get in trouble with the FIA. And looks as though they're probably going to run that new front wing this weekend. So, yeah, that's some good news if you are a Mercedes fan. New front wing coming to the Mercedes car. Maybe it will make a bit of a difference this weekend. We'll have to see in practice. Firstly, But yeah, a good race in Austin. I think they were very unlucky they didn't end up winning, to be honest. I know, obviously, Verstappen, the only reason he had to overtake Leclerc and Hamilton to win in the first place is because Verstappen was held up in the pits for a few more seconds than he would normally be held. And, you know, that benefited Hamilton a lot in his fight to try and win the Grand Prix that last weekend and to win a Grand Prix in 2022. But Mercedes had pretty good pace. You have to remember, before that final pit stop, Hamilton was actually catching Verstappen in the Red Bull. So, you know, the pace was there from Mercedes, but they just, in the end, ended up, you know, failing to win. And Mercedes have actually come out and denied that this was the reason. But I think the reason they didn't win last weekend was not just because Max Verstappen and Red Bull were, you know, just too quick, but and actually I've just seen some other news, by the way, that Formula One have tweeted that the Mexico City Grand Prix is staying on the calendar until at least 2025. So yeah, that's some good news, and good that Formula One is sticking around in Mexico for a few more years. But yeah, I think what cost Mercedes on their end, in the end, was running the hard compound tyre for the final stint. The thing is, though, which I didn't remember at the time, actually, no, I thought, hold on, I was going to say that they ran the medium tyre twice before that final hard tyre stint, but that's not correct. They actually went from the medium to the hard compound tyre for their second stint. So they could have run the medium compound tyre in that final stint, but they decided not to. Leclerc was on the medium. Verstappen was on the medium. I think Perez was on the medium as well. But Mercedes decided to put Lewis Hamilton on the hard compound tyre. And in the end, I think if you're looking at it from a Mercedes point of view, and looking at, you know, what could they have done better, what could they have done that could have resulted in them winning the race, I think that's the only thing you could have looked at and been like, yeah, probably should have gone for the medium to have that early pace at least to keep Verstappen at bay. And the hard tyre, I've got to say, it was working well to a certain extent, but I don't think in those conditions it was working, the hard tyre, as well as the teams were hoping for. So, yeah, I think in the end, Mercedes probably should have put Hamilton on the medium compound tyre. Maybe Max still would have won the race, I'm not sure, but it would have given Lewis Hamilton a better chance, I believe. What do you call it? Yeah, it would have given Lewis Hamilton a better chance at winning the race last weekend. Sorry, I was just reading something in chat and I got distracted. Will1 says, oh no, he's responding to someone else about Mercedes and Hamilton. Sorry. That's what I got distracted by, someone's comment in the chat there. But as for this weekend, it's hard to say where they're going to be, Mercedes, because, I mean, the long pit straight, they're not going to be super quick, obviously, down that part of the circuit, and in the first sector, I don't expect them to be that quick, but we do know that engine power is not important this weekend because of the way the cars work and the power units work at altitude. It doesn't really, we don't really see any differences between the different, power units here in Mexico because of the altitude. And I think here in Mexico, because of the way the altitude works, they have to run their cars. Am I right in saying this? They have to run their cars with the least amount of downforce possible because it has the opposite effect. I'm probably massively incorrect with that, but that's what I believe it works like with these cars around this track at this, higher sea level with the cars. But yeah, How will that affect the Mercedes car? I'm not sure. I think looking at this weekend, I think Mercedes will probably be in qualifying 4th and 5th or 5th and 6th, something like that. I don't think they'll have quite the pace to be fighting for pole position, but because of the much shorter lap here than we get, at COTA, they should be closer on lap time to pole position than they were a week ago. And then in the race, we know that they've got, the advantages of having good tyre wear, probably the best on the entire grid, I would say Mercedes have, which will definitely help them in the race. It will help them a lot compared to the Ferrari team. But compared to Red Bull, is it enough for them to actually win the race? I'm not sure it is. I think realistically what we're going to see is Lewis Hamilton, say, probably finish in 2nd or 3rd, because I think having that good race pace and not wearing out their tyres too much, I think that will help them definitely to a podium. But I'm just not sure they'll be able to actually get up there and get the victory for the team this weekend. And I think really the biggest reason for that is not just because Red Bull, themselves have a very quick car, but I think it's because there'll be too much work for Mercedes to do from their most likely grid position of, again, 4th and 5th or 5th and 6th on the grid. And I just don't think they'll be able to come back from that and win the race. I know, obviously, Lewis Hamilton was 3rd on the grid in Austin, and he ended up, almost winning. But again, it is harder to make progress through the field here than it is in Austin. So, yeah, I think Mercedes will find it a bit harder this weekend to get the victory, and I still believe that Red Bull will come out on top. But a podium is definitely possible, and to be honest, with Carlos Sainz's penalty, I think that... hold on, just looking at the chat to see what people are saying quickly. Hold on. Just trying to see what people are saying quickly, because I just got confused there by a comment. Anyway, back to what I was saying. Yeah, I think Red Bull are just going to be too quick. And again, I think because of Mercedes probably not having a good enough grid position, I think in the end they will end up failing to win this Grand Prix. And if you guys want to know what my prediction is for the top 6 cars this weekend, it is for Max Verstappen, I think will win the race. Sergio Perez will finish in 2nd, so that's a Red Bull 1-2. I think a big reason why they'll get a 1-2 is because they'll have the track position over Mercedes, who I think will have the 2nd best car in the race. So yeah, I think it'll be a Red Bull 1-2 again for Verstappen ahead of Perez. And then 3rd, I'm going to go Lewis Hamilton with Charles Leclerc 4th, and then George Russell 5th, and Carlos Sainz in P6. That's what I think will happen this weekend in Mexico. Let me know, guys, in the chat, though. Do you agree or disagree? Who do you think will win the Mexico City Grand Prix this weekend? Will it be Red Bull? Will it be Mercedes, Ferrari? And what driver as well? Let me know in the chat. I might even do a poll in a moment to see what you guys think in terms of who you think will win the Grand Prix in Mexico. But let's now go on to some stats regarding Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes. Lewis Hamilton has won in Mexico twice since 2016. And yeah, 2016 was one of them, and 2019 as well. And the 2019 victory, I don't think was the one, no, it wasn't the one that got him the championship, but it was very, very important to pretty much securing his championship for 2019. And Mercedes and Lewis Hamilton, again, they have not won a race since Saudi Arabia in 2021, just under a year ago since their last win. Can they get it this weekend? Let me know in the live chat whether you think they can or cannot. And actually, one thing I will do quickly before I move on to the midfield teams is I will do a poll in the chat to see what you guys think and to see who you think will win this weekend. Who will win the race in Mexico? And I'll just quickly do the options for you guys. The options are going to be Verstappen, Perez, Hamilton, Leclerc, if you're wondering. Because, yeah, Russell I don't expect to be that quick this weekend. He's not really that confident at the moment. And obviously hasn't raced here that much before. And as well, yeah, Carlos Sainz has that penalty, we think, for this weekend. So, there you go. And, right, so the top of the chat now, guys. So, make sure to vote on that poll at the top of the chat. Who do you think will win the Mexico City Grand Prix? Verstappen, Perez, Hamilton, or Leclerc? Let me know in the next couple minutes who do you think is going to get the victory. And then I think we'll move on to the midfield teams. And then I will, don't worry guys, I will come to you in the chat once I get through the midfield teams. So, yeah, your comments will be read out pretty soon. Currently, we've got Verstappen and Perez at 50-50, which is interesting. And, well, we've only got 44, 45 people watching. So let's try and get, say, 10 to 15 more votes on that poll at the top of the chat. And then I'll end the poll and see what you guys have to say. You can now see that Verstappen has pulled ahead. Slightly ahead of Perez. Nobody at the minute thinking Hamilton or Leclerc can win, which I'm not necessarily surprised by, because obviously Red Bull have been very successful in 2022, and this has been such a great race for them since 2015. And yeah, Verstappen just about pulling ahead in the poll. Someone in chat saying it is already decided race for Perez. You'll see that on Sunday. I don't see Red Bull doing any of that. I think if Verstappen is out in the lead and Perez is, you know, a few seconds behind and it's a Red Bull 1-2, I think they'll keep it that way. I don't think they're going to move Perez ahead of Verstappen just to get the win. I just don't think they're that type of team. Sorry. I misspoke there. And let's see if we can get a couple more votes in that poll at the top of the live chat. And then I'll end it. Still, nobody voting for Hamilton or Leclerc. And I think I'll just end the poll. Yeah, there you go. We've got a decent amount of votes for the amount of people that are watching. Yeah, cheers for the voting in the poll there, guys. So 14 votes, and you guys think that Max Verstappen will win the race. Perez is your second choice, and then none of you thought that voted that Hamilton or Leclerc would get the win, which, again, I don't necessarily blame you. But quickly before I move on to the midfield teams, I just want to say, if anyone watching is new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe for more content like this, because I have got an absolute mountain of content heading your way for this weekend's Mexico City Grand Prix. I'll be live tomorrow at 6:45 PM UK time for the Practice 1 watch along, which will be going until 8 PM UK time. And then that stream will end and I'll start the Practice 2 watch along about 15 minutes later at 8:15. And then from 8:15 PM until 10 PM, I believe, I'll be doing the build-up to Practice 2. And then from 10 to 11 PM UK time, I'll be doing the Practice 2 watch-along. And then that'll be Friday's content done. So if you are new to the channel, don't forget to come along to that and subscribe for more content like this. And I'll quickly let you guys know what the plan is for Saturday and Sunday. It is on my community tab on my homepage if you want to read it in a written form, but I'll say what it is anyway. I've actually seen, by the way, Practice 2 is actually an hour and a half long. So, yeah, I'll be live, obviously, for that extra half an hour for Practice 2, on Saturday, I'll be going live at 4 p.m. UK time, firstly for the qualifying preview, and then at 5:45 p.m. I'll still be live and be converting over to the Practice 3 watch along until 7 p.m. UK time. And then from 7 till 9 p.m, I'll be doing a build-up to qualifying. 9 p.m. UK time until 10 p.m, I'll be doing the watch-along for qualifying. And then for half an hour after, I'll be reacting with you guys to what's happened in the session. And then on Sunday, I'll be live at 6 p.m. UK time for the build-up to the race, starting with the race preview. Then from 7:30 p.m. till 10 p.m. UK time, I'll be live for the race watch-along. The race starts at 8 p.m. UK time, and then for an hour after the race finishes, I'll be reacting with you guys to what's happened in the Mexico City Grand Prix. And please remember, guys, that the Mexico... no, hold on a minute. Let me rephrase what I was going to say. On Sunday morning, very early on Sunday morning at 2 a.m, the clocks in the UK go from BST to GMT, and they go back 1 hour. So please do remember that in regards to my Sunday stream and when I go live. If I do make a mistake though and I accidentally schedule my stream for too late or too early, I will reschedule it to make sure that I go live 2 hours before the race starts. So if it gets to like, I don't know, 3-4 p.m. UK time, and you see that my stream is scheduled for a certain time, and you're confused as to when the race starts, then all you need to know is that the race will start 2 hours after my stream starts. So yeah, just remember that, guys. But yeah, hopefully you guys don't get too confused by that. It is a bit confusing for me, unfortunately, but yeah. I'm hoping it should be a seamless transition over. And as well, for everyone watching the stream, if you haven't already, don't forget to smash the like button, obviously, to help the channel grow. But now, we will move on to the midfield teams. And we'll start with McLaren, who had a good result. Lando Norris finishing a 6th, a great drive that hasn't been talked about that much, really. From Lando, because he came back from I think 14th or 15th or 13th even to finish in 6th, and he put in a great comeback drive to get a few very, very important points for the McLaren team. And for this weekend's race, I think McLaren should be at least with Lando Norris, they should be the quicker team. If you look at the track layout, the middle and final sector, I think, suits McLaren better, because normally when we go to circuits that are not as reliant on top speed, McLaren tend to be quicker, and that is what this circuit is this weekend in these conditions, with the sea level. And we know the Mercedes power unit in the back of the McLaren is a few horsepower down on the Ferrari and Honda power, or Honda powered teams, so that is going to help McLaren quite a bit this weekend. And I think McLaren, and that's why I think McLaren will be the quickest midfield team. And I think you'll see Lando Norris probably be 7th or 8th in qualifying. I think the only team that could, or the drivers rather, that could spoil Norris's party up there is Sebastian Vettel of the Aston Martin, because I expect Aston Martin to be pretty quick this weekend, as they were in America last weekend. And as well, the the power units not mattering as much in terms of raw power output because of the sea level this weekend. It also helps Aston Martin because they also have the Mercedes power unit in the back of their car. And yeah, Fernando Alonso, I'd say as well, he could, spoil Norris's party, because we know how great he is in general. But yeah, I think you'll see Lando Norris at the front of the midfield pack, and hopefully we will see Ricciardo up there as well, because Ricciardo has historically been pretty quick around here. He got pole position at this Grand Prix 4 years ago, and really would have been on the podium had it not been for his Red Bull car packing up in the end. And had some other great results here. Was 7th, I think, for Renault, or 8th for Renault in 2019. A Renault car that was not very quick that weekend. Last year, he was, I think, 7th or something like that in qualifying. and ahead of his teammate Lando Norris, I believe. So, yeah, look out for Ricciardo this weekend, because I'm sure he will be better than he was in COTA, where for some reason, I don't know why exactly, but he was absolutely horrendous. I mean, maybe it'll happen again this weekend. I really hope not, but looking at his form around this circuit, he should be a bit stronger this weekend than what we've seen mostly in 2022. But for McLaren, I think they should score at least 4-5 points from this Grand Prix, which, to be honest, would be pretty good. Now, obviously, it depends where Alpine would finish, but if they were to score that amount of points, I don't think McLaren really can look at themselves, unless obviously we get a few retirements or some of the top cars. I don't think they could really look at themselves and complain really that much about, the result they got if they ended up getting a few points from this Grand Prix, which has to be really the aim for McLaren if they are going to catch Alpine in the championship before the season is over. Talking of Alpine, let's go on to them now. And yeah, the result they got in Austin was, not good. Fernando Alonso, of course, originally finished in P7. He was given a 30-second penalty and dropped down to 15th in the end. Ocon did grab a point for the Alpine team. Would have been a better result for Ocon and Alpine, actually, if Alpine had not decided, annoyingly for Ocon, to pit him, I think with only, 12, 13 laps to go? And it was just too late of a pit stop for Ocon to be able to come back to where he was before the pit stop. But 1 point from that Grand Prix was just simply not good enough for Alpine. And I know some people may say, well, Alpine were unlucky with the whole penalty that Alonso got. But look, obviously the FIA clearly fucked up with not giving Alonso a black and orange flag. But if they had given him one, he would have lost 30 seconds or so anyway, if not more, than what he actually was given with a penalty. So, in the end, the penalty he got, he deserved. Not because he, the driver, did anything, but because his car was not in a safe condition. So, that's just the way it is, unfortunately. And we can't have cars getting away with having, certain bits flailing off their cars and possibly being a risk to other drivers and spectators and marshals out around or on track. So it was the right decision, I think, to give him a penalty. Maybe you could argue 30 seconds was a bit excessive. I think definitely you could make that argument, but I think giving Alonso a penalty for that, I don't think was the wrong decision. I think it was the correct decision, absolutely. And Alpine, later today, are going to have a hearing about their protest against Haas's protest, I guess you could call it. The thing is, though, the FIA hearing later is not going to be about, overturning the penalty for Alonso. The hearing later is purely to determine the admissibility of Alpine's protest. And then, I guess, if they deem it admissible, then, or they deem that it's, that the protest is absolutely fine, and that they'll go ahead with the investigation, then we should get another hearing, probably later in the weekend, as to, Alonso's penalty that he got in the US Grand Prix. But we'll see what the results of that is. But to be honest, I think the penalty was absolutely just. And again, like I said a few moments ago, the FIA, they fucked up. They fuck up a lot, unfortunately, but that doesn't mean that, Alonso should have gone, or his car should have gone unpunished for that. Because again, even if the FIA had done the right thing and had given him or waved the flag, the black and orange flag for him, he would have lost a load of lap time or time for his race anyway. So yeah. But for this weekend, Alpine should be quick enough to be scoring points with both cars. But will they actually get that? Who knows? They've been so many times in the last few races, Alpine, in great positions, but they just haven't actually got the result. Obviously, Suzuka was not one of those because they got 4th and 7th in that race. But again, Kota, they should have really had a comfortable double points finish there, but it wasn't to be. Singapore, they were running in a pretty good position, but both cars had an engine failure. Monza as well, should have been a few points there. Had a failure on the engine with Alonso. So they've made it very hard for themselves, Alpine. They've had this year the faster car, but they just keep giving McLaren chances to come back in the fight for 4th. And you've got to say, if Alpine do finish lower than 4th and finish in 5th place in the championship, they have only themselves to blame, because they've had many chances to pull away and to give themselves such a big gap to McLaren that McLaren realistically can't catch them. And you know, they've had so many opportunities to give themselves that buffer. Again, I don't think they can really blame anyone else other than themselves if they don't finish 4th in the championship. But knowing Alpine and the way they've been this season, they probably will find someone else to blame if they don't finish 4th in the championship. My prediction is that, again, McLaren, I think, will finish 4th, because I don't trust Alpine to get the results necessary to finish 4th in the championship. And I think McLaren will have one big result before the end of the season that, you know, gets them over the line. Not necessarily, again, a podium, but say close to 10 points being scored for McLaren in a single Grand Prix, I think will happen before the end of the season. And that will cause McLaren to finish 4th in the championship. But really, Alpine on pace for the Grand Prix coming up, they really should be finishing 4th in the championship. So we'll see whether they actually do deliver a result this weekend that they should be delivering, period. Looking at the track layout and the conditions we have here in Mexico, again, I think Lando Norris in the McLaren will be quicker, because this circuit suit cars this circuit does suit cars that have a bit higher downforce, and I think McLaren, they have a bit of a draggy car in McLaren, and I think that type of car will go better at a circuit like this than it will, or that Alpine will go at this circuit. But yeah, they should be absolutely fine, though, Alpine, even if they are slower than McLaren. I don't see, maybe you could argue Aston Martin, but again, we'll have to see in qualifying whether they can deliver the pace. I know, obviously, they did with Lance Stroll in Austin, but they didn't deliver the pace with Sebastian Vettel, so it's not like they delivered it as a team. But they should be fine, Alpine, in terms of scoring points for this weekend. And I say that in terms of, they should have the pace to score points easily this weekend. Whether they actually will is another story. We'll see whether they actually do. Let's go on now to the last few teams. Alfa Romeo, not much to say about them, really. Yeah, their car's just not quick enough right now. They didn't have too bad a pace in Austin last week. Obviously, both cars really should have got into Q3, and in the race, their pace was probably good enough to nick a point or two, but Valtteri Bottas made a comical error at the penultimate corner, was out of the race, and blew any chance of a points finish for Alfa Romeo. But yeah, as I was saying earlier, when I was going through the championship standings, because Aston Martin are quite clearly quicker at the moment compared to Alfa Romeo, I just don't see how Alfa Romeo can keep 6th in the championship, and I think 7th, most likely, is where they're headed. And to be honest, they've got to think themselves lucky that there's not more races in the season, because Haas and AlphaTauri, they're only 14, 15 points behind. And if there were more races to go, Alfa Romeo, honestly, could or would, in that scenario, probably sink a bit lower than 7th in the championship. But yeah, I don't see Alfa Romeo hanging on. And for this weekend, I think they'll be in their typical position. They'll be outside the top 10. Not too bad, but not good enough to be relevant, unfortunately. For Haas F1, great result for them, obviously, in their home Grand Prix last weekend in Austin. A surprisingly good result. Nobody saw it coming. They were pretty slow in qualifying. And a big reason why they ended up getting the points finish they did was because Kevin Magnussen did such a great job in the Haas of managing his tyres. His, I think, medium compound tyres that he was on, 37 laps until the very end of the race, and yeah, ended up finishing in 8th. And it had not been, if it had not have been for Sebastian Vettel overtaking Magnussen on the final lap, Magnussen, with Alonso's penalty, would have actually finished in 7th, which would have been obviously even better and a truly amazing result compared to what Haas have had in the last couple of months or so. They are similar to Alfa Romeo, a team that has not performed very well in the last 2 or 3 months of the season. And obviously in the development race, they have lost out quite a bit, which is not necessarily their fault because of, what happened at the start of the season, them losing their title sponsor. That really did affect them in their ability to develop this car. But yeah, a good result nonetheless. Can they replicate that this weekend? No, I don't think they will. One thing I will say to look out for with Haas, it's not really the car or the team, but it's Mick Schumacher. Because judging by the comments of their team boss and the owner of the team, it looks as though Mick might be at his very... not the very end of his F1 career, but he might be at the very end of his Haas F1 career. Because, yeah, the noises we're hearing out of Haas F1 in regards to Mick Schumacher's performances are not very good at all. So, yeah, I am hoping that Mick puts in a good performance this weekend and just beats Kevin Magnussen, really, to get, not to get, but to have a better chance at being at Haas next season. Because, to be honest, I'm not really excited by the possibility of Nico Hülkenberg being back in F1, because we've already seen what he has to offer, and I don't think that he's going to do anything remarkable, Hülkenberg, in this type of team and in this type of car. So yeah, I think I think Schumacher really is the person who should be keeping the seat there, but we'll see whether he does keep it in the end. For AlphaTauri next, I'll quickly go through these final 3 teams, and then I'll get to your comments, guys, in the chat. Yeah, great result they had here last year, AlphaTauri. Pierre Gasly, I think, qualified 5th and finished 4th in last year's Mexico City Grand Prix. A result that would be amazing if he got now this weekend, because the AlphaTauri car is nowhere near as quick as it was last season. But yeah, this weekend, I don't think realistically points finish is really possible, because I think the 3 best teams out of the midfield pack at the moment are McLaren, Alpine, and Aston Martin. And AlphaTauri, I think the only way they get into the points this weekend is if one of those 3 teams have a bit of a mare this weekend, which is possible. Obviously, we saw Alpine have a bit of a mare, and Aston Martin made things a lot harder for themselves in Austin than it really should have been. So it is possible, but I think on pure pace, AlphaTauri will be struggling to get a points finish this weekend. Quickly for Aston Martin, they, were very quick in Austin. They were the quickest midfield team, and at times they weren't actually that much slower than the top three teams were Aston Martin. Not as slow as you would expect them to be. Their development this season has been very good and definitely gets us pretty excited for next season. Because, of course, the regs next season are the same. And who knows what type of car they'll turn up with at the start of 2023. Hopefully a car that is miles quicker than this one, because it will really make Formula One a lot more exciting next season, obviously with Fernando Alonso joining the team, with, unfortunately, Sebastian Vettel retiring at the end of the year. Vettel had an amazing performance in Austin, and I'm sure in Mexico, where he's had some good races here in the past, that he'll keep up that good form that really he is in. So, yeah, Vettel, definitely look out for him this weekend in that midfield pack, not just because he's in good form and the Aston Martin car looks quick, but also because Lance Stroll, because he caused that incident or crash with Fernando Alonso in Austin, Stroll has a 3-place grid penalty. So even if Lance was to replicate his great form from Austin, it would not play out well in the end because of that 3-place penalty, which I've got to say again, like I said in Austin, he's lucky that it was only 3 places. It really should have been 10 places for what he did to Alonso, because it could have resulted in a much worse accident than it actually turned out to be. Had Alonso kept flying and had not hit the ground before he hit the barriers, it could have been something much, much worse. But yeah, expect Aston Martin to be very quick again. They should be maybe not in qualifying in the top 10. Maybe they will get a car into Q3. But really, it's the race where they will come alive, as they normally do. So yeah, we really look at the race to see where they will be. And I'm sure they will be finishing in the points. Where they'll finish and how many points they'll get, who knows? But they'll definitely be finishing, I think, in the points for this Grand Prix. And finally, for Williams, yeah, I don't see them finishing in the points this weekend. I mean, I did say that for last weekend's Grand Prix, and Alex Albon almost finished in the points. He was only like 3 laps away from finishing in the points. So, I mean, if he puts in another amazing performance like that, then it's possible. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see, essentially. But I still don't see Williams finishing in the points. Hopefully, though, Albon does prove me wrong. But now I'll cut back to these pictures earlier on from obviously the front running teams. And now I'm going to come to your comments, guys, in the live chat. So make sure to keep them coming, because I'll read a load of them now. And we do have, I think, yeah, a couple more things to get into before the end of this stream. So still plenty of things coming your way with the stream tonight. But I just want to say again, if you are new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe for more content like this. And if everyone watching right now, don't forget to smash the like button. And yeah, let me get into some comments in the chat. And I'll try and read out the best few that I can. Prank says Ferrari won their lowered expectation goal of just being competitive. True. And yeah, if you set expectations a lot lower than they should be, then you can't really, I mean, that's a way of getting away with saying that you accomplished what you wanted to in a season, I guess. But let's look at some other comments here in the chat. Ewok says Red Bull will dominate lights to flag. Yeah, I think that's realistically what's going to happen, unfortunately. Prank says drag isn't a big deal in Mexico due to air density and all. Yeah, exactly. That's why I think McLaren will be the quickest midfield team this weekend, because normally they've got quite a bit of drag, but like as you said, it doesn't really affect things this weekend. It'll also help Mercedes, who do have a tad bit too much drag on their car as well. But let's read out some more comments here if I can. Sparky Pete says, only chance for Max not to win is Lewis. It is if Lewis has a Abu Dhabi type ride, pretty much flawless in every way, I guess you're trying to say there. Punctured Ball says, Hammy for King. Hello to Rook in the chat, good to see you. Checo will win home Grand Prix. Red Bull decided in its favour for the great contribution. We'll see whether they decide to do that. I mean, it would be a very nice gesture, but I'm not sure whether it would have been or it is something that they actually should do. I think it would be better if Perez actually won the race on pure merit rather than, Max just letting him through. Ewok says, honestly, I don't get all the negative comments from fans about George Russell. Well, I think it's understandable right now because Russell isn't driving as well as he was earlier in the season. And at the moment, he's not driving as well as he can drive. And has had, especially as of late, a few very clumsy incidents with some drivers. So I think it's absolutely justified, some of the criticism. But, yeah, we'll see whether he can turn it around. I think, realistically, given there's only 3 races to go, I think he probably won't turn it around. But next season, I think, is a big season for Russell because if Mercedes next year, who, by the way, have confirmed that they will be going for a different car concept for 2023, which is great to hear. If Mercedes next year are proper title contenders, if Russell is not in the title fight, then that will be a big problem for him going forward. Because really, he should be a title contender. He's a very, very good driver, and he clearly has the talent to win a few world championships in Formula 1. But yeah, next year is a massive year, I think, for Russell. If Mercedes have, again, a title-winning car in 2023. Josiah says, not a chance Ferrari win this race. Sparky Pete says, Horner said some teams qualify with too much downforce just for time, but crap tyre wear in race. He meant Ferrari. Take that away. RB18, if not the best ever. It's in the top 5 for race pace. Bit of a confusing comment there, but I think I get the gist of what you were saying. Let me see if I can find some other comments here. Hakan Yella says, I want Alonso to win in Mexico. I'm sure, we all want him to win in Mexico, but we know that's not going to happen, unfortunately. And yeah, Will have won earlier. The comment I was a bit confused by was saying that he was, saying to Josiah to calm down about Hamilton winning, because Josiah earlier said, I want Hamilton to win just so people can shut up about him losing the record. Not sure what you mean by losing the record. I guess you mean, you want him to win again so we don't keep mentioning when his last win was. I guess I'm guessing that's what you mean. Let me see if I can find some other comments here before we move on. So Mercedes actually have a chance to do well here. Lol. Yeah. I think Mercedes, again, they've got, in race conditions, I think they've got the car. The problem is they just don't have a high enough grid position. Do you know what it is? It's very reminiscent of like Red Bull about 4 or 5 years ago in like 2017, 2018, where Red Bull always would have a very fast race car, but they would have too low a grid position to actually come through and get like a first or a second place a lot of the time. But they always had a very quick race car. It's the same with Mercedes. If they started the races in a higher position, they would, they probably would have won a couple Grand Prix by now. I know obviously Russell started on pole in Hungary. But Lewis Hamilton was very unlucky that weekend because I think he may have been a tad quicker than Russell in the end. And in qualifying, he ended up in 7th, I think it was, or 8th or something like that. And yeah, his DRS wouldn't work. And that's why he ended up so far back on the grid, did Lewis. Let me see if I can find some other comments here. Just scrolling past where the poll was. Willifon says, honestly, I'm fed up for Ricciardo now. I expect nothing from him, quite frankly. Yeah, I've dropped any expectation with Daniel, unfortunately. Interceptor, what if Latifi starts winning now? It would be a great parting gift for the meme god to get his debut win. Grandmaster Yoda, Max may break the sound barrier with that top speed. Yeah, he's going to be amazingly quick this weekend, I'm sure about it. And let's see if I can find some a couple more comments. Ewok says Mercedes 2023 new car concept, front wing on the rear and rear wing on the front, definite championship winner. And Willifon says there is no way Stroll will beat Alonso in 2023. Yeah, I agree. I thing is though, I don't think it really matters about the drivers next season because if they don't have a car adequate enough, then they won't end up, getting the results really they should for the amount of money and time and everything they put into the project. But thanks for your comments, guys, and I'm now going to get into a couple final things before we come to the end of this stream. The first thing I'm going to get into is some very big news we had a couple days ago on Tuesday, I believe it was. Let me just what do you call it? Find the article so I can read it out on stream, and I'll just get it zoomed in properly so you guys will be able to read. And yeah, let's go on to it now. So Audi on Tuesday, because obviously they announced at Spa a few weeks ago that they will be racing in Formula 1 for the first time in 2026, and they announced on Tuesday what team they would be partnering up with or taking over from 2026 onwards. So let's now go on to that. And this is what was published on the Audi website, see their Audi Media Center. And let's read what they had to say. It's actually quite a detailed statement, I guess you could say. So let's get into it. So they say, the next important milestone on the road to the Formula 1 World Championship has been completed. Audi has selected Sauber, which obviously right now is the Alfa Romeo team, as a strategic partner for the project and plans to acquire a stake in the Sauber group. The partnership will see the traditional Swiss team racing team competing as the Audi factory team from 2026 onwards, using the power unit developed by Audi for the pinnacle of motorsport. So, what that means is, in 2026, it won't just be the Sauber team with Audi power units. It will be the Audi Works team. And it's essentially similar to how Mercedes took over Brawn. They, bought the stake and then they took over the Brawn team. And similar, really, to how BMW took over Sauber back in the mid-2000s. So we are getting not just Audi as a manufacturer and a power unit supplier, we are getting them as a proper works team, which is so good to hear for 2026. So let's get into some of this statement. It says, following the announcement of the Formula 1 entry at the end of August, Audi's confirmation of its strategic partner marks the next milestone in the company's entry into the premier class of motorsport. With around 30 years of competitive experience, Sauber is one of the most renowned and traditional teams in F1, while the power unit will be created at Audi's Motorsport Competence Centre in Nürburg, and Donna, or Donau. Sorry if I mispronounced that. That's pretty hard to pronounce for someone like me who is, English. It goes on to say Sauber will develop and manufacture the race car at its site in Hinwil in Switzerland. So, yeah. So Sauber, again, currently the Alfa Romeo, they will build the race car and Audi will build the power unit, but it will still be the Audi works team from 2026 on. And then it goes on to say Sauber will also be responsible for planning and executing the race operations. So really, the current personnel at Alfa Romeo will probably remain there, to be honest. And we got some comments there by, I think, the person running the show. Oliver Hoffman, member of the board for technical development at Audi, says, we are delighted to have gained such an experienced and competent partner for our ambitious Formula One project. We already know the Sauber Group with its state-of-the-art facility and experienced team from previous collaborations and are convinced that together we'll form a strong team. And then it goes on to say, for example, Audi Sport has regularly already used the Sauber Group's high-tech wind tunnel in Hinwil, just under 4 hours away by car, during the successful Le Mans era during the development of the Class 1 touring car for the DTM. If you don't know, yeah, Sauber, they've got a very good and high-tech wind tunnel that they've had for years, and they've had it, I think, since the mid-2000s, this wind tunnel, and it's always been a very good one. The reason they've not been able to utilize it that much is not because they're incompetent, it's because they've not really had the money to be able to fully utilize the wind tunnel. I mean, we saw when BMW took over Sauber in the mid-2000s, they really did develop a lot during that period. From 2006 to 2008, they went from a midfield team to a title contender in just 2 years. So, there's definitely a lot of potential there for Audi to become that if they utilize the facilities well. Sauber is a first-class partner. I think this bit is just going into a bit more comments about stuff that we already know. And we'll get into this bit quickly, though. The expansion of the Nürburg facility is in full swing, they say. The timetable up to the first race with Audi participation in the 2026 season is ambitious. The expansion of, I'll just call it the facility, is in terms of personnel, buildings, and technical infrastructure should be largely in place in 2023. The first tests with the power unit developed for the 2026 regs in a Formula One test car are planned for 2025. So when we get to 2025, I'm sure I'll be bringing you news of those tests that they're going to be doing. I assume they'll be using an old Alfa Romeo or Sauber car to do those testing in. That testing in. And then it goes on to say, Formula One is taking a big step towards sustainability with the new regulations that will come into effect from 2026. This was an important prerequisite for Audi to decide to enter the championship. The power units will be more efficient than they are today, as the proportion of electric power will increase significantly. The electric drivetrain will then have nearly as much power as the ICE, which comes to 400 kilowatts or 544 horsepower. And it also goes on to say the highly efficient 1.6 litre turbocharged engines will be powered by sustainable synthetic fuel that is CO2 neutral according to EU standards. Formula One has also set themselves the goal of being CO2 neutral, or carbon neutral, sorry. Why did I say CO2 neutral? Carbon neutral as a racing series by 2030. So yeah, great news, and I cannot wait to see what they will be able to do. And to be honest, again, given the facility Sauber have that I don't think have been fully taken advantage of because Sauber/Alfa Romeo just haven't got the finances to be able to fully bring out the best of it, of their facilities. With Audi pumping in, a lot more money and resources and probably some better personnel as well from not just Formula One, but motorsport in general. Audi should be, I think, a success in Formula One. I don't think there's any excuse for Audi to not be a success in Formula One. I know people may say, well, they've never raced in F1 before. You know, they've never done a race as a team. They've never been an engine manufacturer. This will be their first ever foray into Formula One. Maybe we should be a bit more lenient in terms of criticism towards them. But really, given how much time they'll have to prepare for 2026, when obviously all the other engine manufacturers and teams will have to focus on what's going on right now and what's going on for 2026, that gives them an advantage. And yeah, they've already got a head start by taking over Sauber, and will already have, a pretty decent team there from when they get started in 2026. When if you compare that to what Toyota had when they entered F1 in 2002, Toyota came in completely fresh. They didn't take over an existing team. They came in completely fresh for the 2002 season, which looking back was probably a mistake. Toyota probably should have took over Sauber back then, 20 years ago, and it would have helped them get a lot closer to the front of the field quicker. But I would say, given this announcement and the facilities they'll have available, and given it is such a big company, really, I think Audi should be contending for world championships by the start of the next decade. So 2030, 2031, something like that. I'm not going to say they should be challenging for championships by 2028. I think that's a bit unrealistic. I think, realistically, the best we're going to see from Audi is them be like an upper midfield or front-running team that maybe grabs a win or two per season towards the end of the decade. But yeah, by the start of the next decade, they should be really title contenders, should Audi. And hopefully they get their first ever power unit in F1 or engine, whatever you want to call it. Hopefully they get it right, because if they do, I'm sure plenty of other teams will want to be having some of that Audi power unit from 2026 on. The much more electrified power units we'll be having from 2026 on. I see in the chat though, Ewok saying Red Bull, so Red Bull will be using Audi engines in 2026. I'm not sure about that. I think Audi might actually just want to stick on their own for the moment. I'm not sure we're going to get anyone else, any other teams, going for the Audi power unit. We'll have to see how that works out. But yeah, good news there, and I cannot wait to see them in F1 in 3.5 years from now, which I'm sure will fly by. Anyway, let's go on finally to an onboard lap of the track. I want to do this obviously because some people have not seen races or laps around this track before. So this is the circuit. Sector 1 in the red, Sector 2 in the blue, Sector 3 in the yellow. Sector 1 is really just flat out. Turn 1, 2, and 3, which is kind of like a triple chicane, or a 3-part chicane, I guess you could say. They're important corners, but really it is your speed down the straights, which is important as well. Or the most important, I would say, in the first sector. Sector 2 is really about your speed at in the high-speed corners. Because turns 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, they come at you very quickly and they're very high speed. And then the final sector, Sector 3, it's really about, It's really about your slow speed corner performance. So really, this circuit does test out every aspect of your car. And let's now get onto an onboard lap from the WEC series, and this is on board a Porsche 919 hybrid that you can see there. This is from a few years ago, and on board this Porsche, let's go through the lap. So down the very long pit straight into turn 1. Turn 1, the main place for overtaking around this circuit, and then you come into, I guess you'd call this a chicane, but because turn 1 is right before then, to me it's kind of a 3-part chicane, that part of the track, as he now comes on to the second DRS zone, and into the second sector he comes. Obviously he's got a quite slow GT car ahead of him, so much slower than him. that corner right there he just went through, very important for racing, because you can make moves into there. Then you come through that double right-hander into these high-speed corners. First the left, then into the right, left again, and then another right just there, and then finishing off with a left-hander. And again, you do need a very stable rear end through those corners, because if you don't, you'll be off into the barriers, and yeah, you'll be off into the barriers big time. Into this corner, really, we do see a lot of lockups into that corner, and getting the front end in to all of these corners in the final sector, very, very important. As you come to the final corner pretty much here, again, getting the front end in, very, very important. And that is a lap around this Mexico City track. I won't say the exact name of it because it is a bit hard for me to say it, because of my lingo, I guess you could say. But it is a good track. It's not the best track on the calendar. There's definitely many tracks that are better, but it is a good racetrack. There is no doubt about that. But guys, I think I am going to bring this stream to a close because I've been live for an hour and 40 minutes, and that's pretty much my weekend preview done for this weekend's Mexico City Grand Prix. So thank you guys for coming along. And again, make sure to come around tomorrow for my Practice 1 and Practice 2 watch-alongs. Practice 1 watch-along, I'll be starting at 6:45 PM UK time, and then going until 8 PM for the Practice 1 session. And then I'll be cutting that stream off to sort out some stuff on my coding, because obviously there are some Friday practice drivers that will be driving in Mexico. And then about 15 to 20 minutes later, at 8:15 or 8:20 PM UK time, I'll be going live again for the Practice 2 watch-along. And then from 8:15, say, until 10 PM, we'll be doing a build-up to qualifying. And then, not to qualifying, sorry, doing a build-up to Practice 2. And then from 10 PM UK time until 11:30, we'll be doing the Practice 2 watch-along. And then that'll be all of tomorrow's content done with. And again, I'll be doing plenty of long content and long streams for Saturday and Sunday, covering Practice 3 and qualifying and the race, and doing a qualifying preview and race preview for those certain sessions as well. So make sure to come around to that content this weekend. It would be great to see you guys there. I also want to say apologies about myself for tonight's stream, because I don't know why, but I've been very jittery tonight, and I've been very what do you call it, like, yeah, constantly correcting myself and all of that. So yeah, sorry if I've done that a bit too much, but yeah, I don't know what's wrong with me today. I don't know if it's because I'm tired. I think it probably is because I'm a bit tired, because I've been so busy in the last week or so. But yeah, I feel very jittery, and just, yeah, keep correcting myself over and over again. So sorry if that has annoyed you at any point tonight. But if you are new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe for more content like this and that content coming up this weekend. And don't forget, for everyone watching still, to smash the like button on this video, because again, it does help the channel grow. And as well, don't forget to follow me on Twitter at ChazHD5, and join my Discord server, link below in the description, for more content like this. But guys, until my Practice 1 watch-along tomorrow at 6:45 PM UK time, it has been me, ChazHD. Goodbye.